Jed Grieve of Cook Culture, thanks for joining me in this special series that we've created, COVID-19 Leadership in a Crisis. This really is a crisis. I've talked to some business owners and asked them how this is impacting them, and they're saying, well, how is it not? What are you doing to ensure that you can continue to meet needs of those customers who still want your services, and most importantly, stay in business?
Well, it's kind of two things. Stay in business is a huge question mark, right? Because right, how long, what we're doing, what the future holds, no idea. What we're doing to meet the needs of the customers, we're not in a business in which is a necessity. You know, we're not a functional business for that, like a grocery store or a hardware store or Shoppers Drug Mart. But strangely, we have found that people are now cooking at home breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, so they're eating at home all the time, and we've had a fairly heavy demand, which has been really surprising and great for the employees that we do have left. We decided last week as a team, you know, and the managers all had their own say on who wanted to stay on and who didn't, and so we had just over 24 people that were laid off early last week so that they could start processing for EI quickly. And we have a very, very small team left over, and they're busy, which is not meaning that on the business side question, that doesn't come anywhere close. It's a drop in the bucket. However, you know, they have jobs at this moment. You know, people are cooking, they're buying kitchen equipment. So, you know, for the meantime, we're actually going through the motions of being in business. I don't know what that means for the future, but in this day, while my wife and I, who's my business partner, you know, we decided that, okay, like one day at a time, that's all we can do right now. It's just kind of control the one day that we're doing. So, you know, I'm trying to support our customers with good information that we're sending out about, you know, what we're doing for them to, while they're at home, with challenges of, like, you know, simple things, everyday things. You know, what do I cook for my family again tonight? You know, we've had pasta 3 nights in a row. You know, and these are simple, very mundane sorts of things, but really don't mean anything in the grand scheme of what we're dealing with. But it is the trials of each day as you're trying to cook more at home, where a lot of people cook at home 15% of the time, 20% of the time, and that's pretty common these days. And now they're 80 or 90% of the time, you know, a little bit of takeout. So it's interesting, that opportunity for us to at least stay active. If we call that being in business, I'm not totally sure.
How many stores do you or outlets do you have?
3. So we have our business we're in North Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, and Victoria. And each one of our locations is also a teaching facility. So we teach cooking classes and we sell retail.
Which is the major part of your business, the selling of cooking utensils and pots and pans and so on, or the training or teaching side of it?
On a dollars and cents sense, it's the retail. The retail is the driver in our business, and that's the economic engine of our business. However, the emotional part, the connection to the community, is our teaching facilities. You know, if somebody stops me on the street and we're chatting about business, they don't talk to me about the last knife they bought or the rolling pin. They talk to me about the class they took, or there's something they want to do, or, you know, something that they're trying to do for themselves for their own health and wellness.
You had to cancel those classes?
Completely. So, you know, that whole team, the culinary team, were laid off. And on top of that, we have probably 12 or 14 different contractors that we work with that teach different classes like sushi and Indian and all the different things that we don't do out of our core classes from our own employees do. You know, so they're not creating that revenue at the moment too.
Wow. So on the retail side of the business, are people still coming in, or is it just trace amounts of people who are coming and buying?
We are operational in our downtown location, that on any given Sunday, say in our downtown location, we're in the business district of downtown Vancouver. It's a very quiet location, so we're not dealing with any sorts of crowds. We have, you know, a customer every 10 minutes. So we're able to keep a good distance apart and service that customer appropriately. The majority of our customers, or the great majority of our customers right now, are online, you know, and so we're busy with pulling items and packing and shipping and getting things, and we're shipping across the country right now.
So you are able to keep the doors open. You keep some people employed. What are the biggest challenges?
Outside of my wife and I, there's 2 employees out of 28 that there were.
Wow. So 4 of you out of 28.
Yeah.
Wow. Holy smokes. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing in the next week that you need to address, and how are you trying to come up with a strategy that's going to help you see your way through that?
The unknown is the toughest one. It's like there's, you try to look at trends that have happened in different places around the world that happened sooner than us. And, I was reading about Taiwan this morning and how they're dealing with it, and the kids are all still in school and people are still actively doing business. It's hard to say, are we going to have some sort of a shift from the government before this just generally kind of slowly gets back into business? Are we going to be told, okay, hey, now we've done everything to soften the curve. Now everybody just needs to kind of get back to business. It's hard to know. So the unknowing is the hardest part, I think, is how we're going to actually get the engine back up and going and reopen the kitchens and restock the pantries and, bring people back on, who starts first without running out of cash flow incredibly quickly, and bringing people back on before we actually have revenue to match that expense. So that those kind of questions that, unless you have a rule book, I don't think that you do. I don't have one. I would love to know how to manage this appropriately. Yeah. But, business will, I am definitely being as optimistic as I can. Business will come back. But how that works and how we do that in a way in which we can manage. Right now, we have hard expenses that are still going out the door, that we're just trying to break even at that, right? There's nothing left over whatsoever, no matter how good each day is. If selling whatever online, we are going backwards, really. We're just going through the actions of staying in business. So the unknown is probably the hardest. But in a day-to-day basis, we are selling things and keeping stock. Our suppliers are open. I'm working actively with our biggest suppliers, and they're being tremendous on trying to keep business flowing and what they can do to support us. So, business is happening in the background at the same time.
Well, what are the items that people are looking for the most? And it's good that you can keep them coming. What do you do then also, just sort of a carry-on question of that, what do you do with those orders that maybe you had in place for products that you right now see are not moving? Are you able to put a stop to those? I know it's a double-barrel question. Sorry about that. Yeah,
well, anything that's orders aren't coming. So anything that was, coming as a regular stock order is not coming. And the things in which we're selling well, those suppliers are still actively able to supply us. So there's no problem with the supply chain, which is good. But of what we're seeing sell, we're selling a lot of electrics. We sell very high horsepower blenders called Vitamix, and those have been selling very well. We've put certain things on promotion to help. Things that are a higher price ticket, brought the pricing down of those. People always love those when they're on sale, and people covet certain items and they love when they go on sale because they've been wanting that for a long time. And so cast iron cookware, expensive Japanese knives, those are things that we're offering good value on, and people are snapping up.
What about your relationship with your landlord? So, rent is one of those things. When you're a commercial renter, you're locked into leases, and I don't know whether or not there's anything that anybody could have ever imagined that would allow us to go to our landlord and say, help me.
Totally. I totally understand what you mean. So our landlords are all a little bit different per location. In North Vancouver, we deal with more of a corporate style business that is very much by the book. And I haven't heard anything from them yet. I've reached out, but no word back. Our downtown Vancouver location is owned by a family that actually owns several large towers downtown Vancouver. And they're a tremendous family, and the support has always been there for us. And then in Victoria, we're in what's called the Atrium Building that's owned by Joll Properties and the Joll family of Victoria. They actually just donated $100,000 of their own money to a fund in which they've actually started in partnership with the Victoria Foundation in Victoria. And we couldn't ask for a better landlord and better people in Victoria. They're there to support us, and I know through talking with them already that they will make sure that we survive in our Victoria location no matter what.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
They are amazing. They're amazing people. Yeah. They are also part of the backbone of the entire Victoria Foundation, like of Victoria community. They have done a tremendous amount of stuff. So we're just happen to be very fortunate to be in one of their buildings and to be supported by a landlord like them.
because we're all in this together, and part of that is a partnership with government, what is it that you're hoping might come out of some of the programs that come forward that can make it as easy as possible for you to, and this is my own thinking, rather than apply for money, hang on to the cash that you have. What is it that the government can do to help us that way?
I was reading the details on how we can apply for, or not apply, but kind of keep the money for our monthly contribution for our employment payment to CRA.
Well, that was only a portion, wasn't it?
It's a portion. It's 10%. So it is a bit of a drop in the bucket. However, just that process is about just keeping what you have. So instead of when we do remit, it's not EI or CCP, but it is the taxes in which we can hold back 10%. We have to do the calculation manually and then apply as when we do our remittance on the 15th of each month. So right. That's good, but it's only 10%. That's the bad part. The way in which we do it is easy because you're right. We just keep the money and adjust the payment and the submission. It'd be better if it was more 50 or 75% at this time, because it is. I was talking to another good friend of mine this morning who has a different type of business in Victoria. And he has had to lay off. He has all contractors. He's in the health business, all contractors. He's completely shut, has no way to make revenue, and he still has expenses. He has debt on the business, starting the business. He has rent, he has insurance, he has hydro, everything's still there. It's still running. So he's just accumulating debt every day. No, like we are, but we have a fraction of our door open, so we're fortunate.
Well, as you're talking about your associate, I also think the rules around letting somebody go are unclear at this point. Do you owe severance? How many weeks do you have to pay out? You look for that information, you can't find it. You go to Service Canada, it says it's open, they're not open. You can't get an ROE. Yeah. It's very, very confusing. Yeah. Fortunately for us, the team of everybody that did leave, they wanted to be able to apply very quickly. We made that choice with them very quickly, and everybody moved forward quickly. I actually spoke to our Victoria manager this morning, who is happy at home with her daughter, safe, healthy. Was able to. Her husband works out of town, and so she can be with her daughter. So there's some advantages. However, you're right. If we can't get up to full speed and all of a sudden we can only bring back half the people, what about that severance? What does that look like? I don't have that cash flow to all of a sudden pay out 14 people severance, and we work hard to keep our people. So we've got some tenure. And so that ends up being pretty expensive. Right. And so there's a slowdown. What do you do to ensure that if we start to return to some sort of normalcy, you have the resources that you need to be able to start to ramp back up, because that costs money as well. Yeah.
That one that's a huge unknown, and that really could be the part that buries us completely. It's not like we are flushing cash. We're in retail that is extremely tight and only gotten tighter. If we had been talking 3 or 4 months ago, you'd be talking to me about the retail Armageddon. And that's a real thing. We've been feeling that for a long time, and we're trying to adjust and manage how we deal in this previous marketplace of dealing with the Amazons and the other people that come for our margin. And how do we battle against that? As I've been in business for chasing 30 years, and I've watched our margin erode and expenses go up every decade, to a point where you're barely kind of holding on as it is. And now this. Right. So I just don't know. It's going to be one day at a time, figuring out, what's available to us from all levels of government. What are the landlords going to do? What are the banks going to do? We're not, if nothing, there's no other movement, there's no way forward. Right. If we don't get help from other places to succeed, there's no way I see us financially succeeding. I don't know how the math works.
Is it hard on you when you hear governments talk about people who have had different situations in life than that of being a business owner, and they're all the first line people who get looked after? Fine, I have no trouble with that. But then there's virtually no mention about how are we going to protect the people who provide those jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting to look at history a little bit. You know, we've got the 2008 financial crisis to look at of what was done. I was actually listening to NPR the other night, and were interviewing one of the guys that was in the room in the U.S. During that 2008 financial crisis. And it was interesting what he was saying. You know, what did we do wrong? What did we learn from 2008? And he was saying, you know, we didn't do enough fast enough. And there wasn't enough money. We kept trying to analyze and decide who deserves what, when, how. And they kept saying no to people because they were paralysis from analysis. And he said, you know, his advice to the current administration in the US and any other government is throw just as much water on the fire as you can. You know, it takes money, and it doesn't matter who, what, how. If you don't get money to the people that need it, if whatever their circumstances were before, if their business was weak before, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. If you try to separate those people, you're going to fail. And I can see that, right? Like right now, if somebody came and started to analyze our business and be like, well, how much are you actually, you know, do, and how much support from what you were financial situation before to now, or how much money do you have on hand, or whatever, you know, that I could see this going on for months, right? Like the CRA would be the ones managing that, and they're not the fastest people in the world. You know, and
you're being kind,
you know, you know, and so we're waiting till like sometime in 2021 to get some financial aid of where the money meets the road. We just wouldn't survive that.
Right.
You know, we operate annually on, you know, everybody understands what Black Friday is. We operate on that same sort of annual cycle. You know, we struggle and scrape and pull everything together as best as we can for 9 months of the year, for 3 months of the year that we can make some gravy. And that's how our cycle works. And it's so fragile throughout those 9 months that if anything goes, you know, a tiny bit wrong, this isn't just a tiny bit wrong, you know, then it's incredibly painful, you know, and, you know, if we've had snow in February or whatever it is, you know, that impacts us in a huge way. And so, and I know that, so that I know there's been times I've had to go and get extra money because of 10 days of snow, you know, and so this, I don't even really understand how we go forward.
So, I appreciate you taking the time to share your experience right at the moment with all of this. Most importantly, how are you, your wife, who's your partner, and your family holding up?
Yeah, thank you for that. Incredibly well, actually. Our children are happy and cared for. We live in a beautiful city. We've been outside a lot. We're spending time together as a family. You know, my wife and I have spent a lot of time together talking about the future, and we both know that if things go sideways for us completely, that will be what will come. And getting ourselves wound up and not sleeping and stressed now and not being happy as a family and being solid together at home is only going to impact us negatively. So we've decided just not to go that route and to do everything we can on a day-to-day basis and support our customers best we can, and, you know, continue talking to our tribe and making sure that that business is there when we start moving forward, and making sure that we're being active on how do we apply for what as we go forward. But as a family, we've decided that a position of positivity and love and support is the best way to go forward.
I wish you all the best. My thoughts are with you. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
Okay. Thanks for reaching out.
Thank you.